Hello everyone, if this is your first talk with us today, then welcome to the Sales Enablement Festival. And for those of you who've already been tuning in to our selection of talks, welcome back. We have so much more amazing content heading your way, but before we get back into it, we just want to take this moment to thank all our amazing sponsors and partners for bringing this virtual festival to life. We also want to thank you, our attendees, for joining us today. If you're enjoying the content from the festival, be sure to check out the SEC membership plans. It's here where you can gain access to exclusive content, research and frameworks, and discounts to things like our brand new workshop series and so much more. You can find more information about this over on the Sales Enablement Collective website. Don't forget to have your questions ready for the live Q&A at the end of this talk, as you'll have the chance to put them to the experts themselves. That's everything from me, so all that's left to do is sit back and enjoy this next talk. Hello everyone, and yes, welcome back to this next talk. This talk is hosted by Amy McLean, who is the Senior Manager of Sales Enablement over at Calendly, and she's going to talk to you all about the metrics that matter and how to use data to communicate enablement's business impact. So over to you, Amy.
Thank you, Jack. Welcome everybody. I'm excited seeing everybody chiming in from all around the world. This is really exciting. As Jack said, I'm here to talk about metrics that matter and how to use data to communicate enablement's business impact. A little about me at Calendly. I've been here about a year, and over that year, we've established the enablement function, scaling it from a team of me to a team of 6 of us. And we've implemented several different initiatives that have made a big impact on the business. But the way we continue to get funding is by being able to report out on what we're doing. So let's get into how this has worked for us and how it might work for you as well. So why is it important to measure your outcomes and report out to the business? In addition to making sure that you're demonstrating the value of your work, that you're quantifying ROI, we're all here to serve one purpose, and that's help our sales teams sell more. But the more that we can lean in on the ROI of what we're doing to help empower and enable our teams to sell better, we'll gain alignment and buy-in around our initiatives. Sales leaders get on board, they start seeing how you are contributing to moving the needle for them, and more of what you do will start to come to life. This will also aid in securing future investments as you're looking at new tools or new headcount. The more you've been able to prove the value of what you're doing, the more that they'll come on board with you. So starting out, you want to establish enablement benchmarks. How do we do that? Well, first you want to identify where you're starting and then where you want to be. And enablement is what connects the dots in between. So the how is what we're really going to dive into today and really detail how we get from current state to future state and credit that back to enablement efforts. So let's give some examples. So the first one, let's look at sales velocity. If your current velocity would look something like from lead coming into your funnel to converting to close one, takes about 100 days, it would be remarkable if you were able to find ways to shorten that sales cycle by 10 days and help get more deals through the funnel faster and realize revenue. Another example is through ramp time. There's different ways that people will measure this. Some of the ways that we look at it at Calendly is we want to shorten the time to the first deal sold. And then we also look at how long it takes reps to get to the point that they're consistently hitting quota. For us, that means 3 consecutive months. So I want to be able to tie efforts around onboarding and ramping AEs back to, are we getting them to close their first deal faster? And are we getting them to consecutively achieving quota? And another example, a huge outcome for any enablement team would be if you know that once deals are in funnel, 40% of them end up in a close win, and you're able to move that needle to 60%, you will have great wins. and lots of investment and excitement around all of the initiatives you bring to the table. So let's dive a little bit deeper in how we do this. Using sales velocity as our example, this is a standard, pretty generic sales cycle, but let's use this as our example. And again, we were looking at 100 days and trying to carve out and shorten this by 10 days down to 90. So where is there drag in the sales funnel? And how can we shorten time to convert between stages? The way that we go about this will look very different depending on where in the sales cycle we're feeling that drag. Around prospecting, you need to understand and dig a little deeper. If it's converting between stages like qualification to needs analysis, the way that you solve that problem will probably look very different than if you've got a stall in your negotiation to closed one. So we at Calendly look at 3 different pillars on how to diagnose the right problems and deliver the right solutions around performance gaps. This is what we lean into most often as performance consultants, which is the way we view ourselves at Calendly. There are 7 factors we lean into, but these 3 are the ones that we find are best able to help us diagnose the right problems. Oftentimes, when sales leaders are seeing a need for something more, something's not working quite right, generally they'll call on enablement and say they want training. We don't want to be order takers here. It would be really easy to hear what they want, deliver the training. But if we want to be performance consultants and help diagnose the right problem, we want to look across process, training, and tools. And once we lean into the right performance gap, solve it in the right way, we'll be able to show our measurable impacts on business outcomes. Let's go a little deeper. So process. How do we know if an undocumented process or unclear process is what's causing friction in your sales cycle? If you can say yes to any of these, then process is probably not what the root cause of this performance gap is. Are AEs converting leads to opportunities when they should? So that's early stage. If they're not, you might just need to document a process for converting marketing qualified leads to sales qualified opportunities. If every AE understands clearly what that qualified lead looks like, then they should start converting them consistently and repeatedly all across your sales deals. That's an easy process to fix. Another example would be if your AEs are not consistently converting opportunities between stages at the appropriate time, better documenting what your exit stage criteria looks like might help you land on this consistent behavior. Again, if some are getting it right and some are getting it wrong, there's probably a gap or unclear process that would help align people and get them all up to speed. Again, training is probably not the right solution here. It's just defining this process. And then last, is there clear documentation around moving deals through procurement? You know, across the places I've worked, I see that procurement seems to be the biggest sticking point on both sides of the table. But if you're able to document and help AEs understand how to go from sending that NDA and then sending a SOC 2 report if you need to do that for your security measures, or when you receive an MSA, where are they empowered to go and start negotiating that so they can own their own deals? But before any AE would feel comfortable looking at a legal document and talking through it, you'd want to define clearly what they should look for, what your company's position is, and how they could solve for that. But if you document that process, that may be all it needs, all it takes to help accelerate the lead conversion from there just by a couple of days by tightening up these processes. And if you've said yes to all of these things, that you're getting lead conversion the way you want, that they are converting opportunities at the appropriate time, and procurement's not an issue, then defining process may not be the right trigger to lean in on. So maybe training is the right solution for you. So looking across this, is a gap in knowledge or skill causing friction? This is where you want to lean in specifically when there's new information, new process, or new behaviors. So can you say yes to these to know whether training is the right solution? So do customer-facing teams use consistent messaging related to value prop and competitive advantages? This goes up there in prospecting. And if you're seeing a gap here, introducing or leaning further into your sales methodology could help accelerate deals through this place. So training more on how you prospect, how you communicate your value proposition and your competitive advantage will help you through this stage. And that would be a training solution. Next, does the sales team understand the business issues that customers are needing to be solved with the tool? This is what brought them to the table. And the way to solve this is most likely leaning in on discovery training. Do they know how to take people through a pain funnel? Do they know what will trigger someone to buy or how they're going to make their decision between you and possibly other tools? So all of this might come down to discovery training. And then one more example, if there are new features and functionality and you're concerned about the positioning and whether you're landing this appropriately, because it's new features and functionalities, this would definitely be a training solution that's warranted to help solve for it here. But if you've said yes to all of these, that you know that you've got consistent messaging, that we are uncovering real business issues that we can solve with our tools, and everyone knows how to talk about new features and functionality, training would not be the right solution. So let's lean in one more place. Let's look at tools. So is there a gap in your tech stack that's causing friction in your sales cycle? So first, do AEs use tech and tools as intended? So the unique thing around tools is most can help relieve friction across the entire sales funnel, across your whole process. So if AEs are using tools as intended to expedite process, then this may not be a gap. We at Calendly use SalesLoft as a tool to help curate and send out and schedule the right messaging at the right time to any prospect and customers. So as long as they're leaning in and using this, it helps ease our communication with our customer and make sure that we're giving them the information they want at the time we know that they want it. Another example is tool integration. A lot of times in the past, tools have been standalone, and so it felt kind of clunky working from one to another. But if you're able to integrate them, we'll use an example like a sales enablement platform. We're in the process of integrating HighSpot into our Salesforce instance. So instead of having a playbook that sits in a drawer someplace collecting dust, we're able to curate our sales plays, the content that's applicable, tying it to a stage in our sales funnel, and then we can even offer up training modules in that time of need. So if this is around negotiation or having budget conversations, we can offer up just enough just-in-time training through our enablement platform because it's integrated and tied to our sales stages. And then last, could tools be deployed to create efficiencies across your sales cycle? This is where a tool like Calendly really helps sales teams. So if you think about all of the points in a sales cycle where you're having meetings with customers, whether it's your SDR getting on an initial discovery call and demo, or it's your SDR handing off to your account executive, or any of the number of AE meetings along the way, if you only had these 7 meetings, and it takes on average 7.3 emails back and forth to get one meeting scheduled, that's 49 emails back and forth, and no one has time for that. So with Calendly, you're able to send one link and help connect all of these dots. So your 49 emails back and forth get reduced to just 7. And that saves a lot of time, especially when there can be days that drag in between each of these. So just implementing a tool like this alone could help you save those 10 days in your sales velocity. So here's how Calendly works in case you're not familiar with our tool. We're a modern scheduling platform for high-performing teams that helps automatically identify that intersection of availability between your internal team members and whoever the stakeholders are outside of your company that you're trying to meet with. So just by being able to send one link will identify those times, those easy meeting times, and they can schedule at their convenience and also reschedule at their convenience, always having that quick visibility into your availability. So looking towards metrics and how a tool like this might be able to make a meaningful impact on your business, we'll share some of the stats that our customers have realized. So we all know that the vendor that gets in front of a customer first is the one that's most likely to get the deal. 50% of deals are won by the vendor that gets to them first. You become the benchmark by which any competitor is measured. So that will help you get that win rate up just by being the first to the table. We can also help you increase sales qualified ops by 40%. And our customers have seen a 2 times increase in the number of demos scheduled. So if you're a SaaS business and you're trying to make sure that you're able to get people to the table, reduce no-shows, Calendly might be the right solution for you. And again, this helps affect your entire sales cycle. So we don't look at just one solution to solve problems. Whenever you're identifying a way that you might be able to make a difference in your business, if someone's asking for training, that might be the right way, but make sure you're considering other ways of solving these problems so that you can get to the right solution and it becomes predictable, repeatable, and scalable, and you can deliver the right outcomes for your business. So let's talk about what these metrics are that you deliver back to your business. You know, it's meaningful for us to have these kinds of numbers, like from 100 days, you want to get it down to 90 days. But the number you want to put on the scoreboard is that you helped make your sales cycle 10% faster. Looking at ramp time, you could say you're shortening it by 30 days or down to 120 days from 180. But the metric that will matter the most to your business is 67% improvement in quota achievement. And then that win-loss rate, being able to say that because of enablement efforts, you can show your benchmark where you started, you show where you ended up, and if you're able to put on the scoreboard a 20% increase in deals won, then that shows a big win for your enablement team. Of course, there are a lot of other metrics that you could lean in on. These were examples of 3, but being able to show where you've increased average deal size by teaching people negotiation skills and not leaning in on discounts to get deals done, but by really honing in on value. That's a big measure. Content effectiveness, you want to know what people are consuming and when. That's a really meaningful one. And of course, when you're offering training, you always want to report out on the effectiveness of that time you're taking sellers away from selling to customers, away from selling activities. So anytime you're pulling people away, make sure you're mindful of what those outcomes are and that we're landing and really being effective in that training time. And those are the metrics that matter. What are the questions that you have?
Awesome. Amy, thank you so much for taking us through that presentation and run through of the metrics that matter. We do have some time for questions. So if anyone does have any questions for Amy, please feel free to drop them into the chat and she'll be more than happy to answer them. So Amy, I'd love to kick things off. And for anyone that maybe joined late or kind of didn't get all of that, if you could kind of like sum up everything you kind of just said into kind of like, I guess, a key point as to why someone should look at using Calendly to kind of like shorten their sales cycle is kind of what I guess would be your key takeaway.
Sure. So Calendly as a tool to help shorten a sales cycle, it helps take the back and forth out of meetings. So on average, it takes 7 emails back and forth to get one meeting scheduled. If you're having 5, 6, 7, 8 different calls with customers, to be able to get those meetings scheduled and on the books faster will be critical to lessening that conversion time and getting to your customers down the pipeline and getting to closed won. So really being able to use a tool that optimizes and helps increase your sales velocity is a critical tool in your tech stack.
Awesome. So the first question here has come from Sam, who's asked, take us through the conversation you have with sales ops to get started on this journey.
Absolutely. So we've recently worked with sales ops internally. We work very closely with our revenue ops team. And in looking at things like process and stage exit criteria, the way that we did this is together side by side with our RevOps team. We engaged all of the stakeholders. We spoke with our AEs, with the sales leaders, brought everyone to the table to get alignment on what felt like the right stage exit criteria and when those should be implemented. So anytime we're working through initiatives specifically related to tools, we're always doing it side by side with sales ops. They're our biggest partners in pretty much any enablement initiative that we're having. So they're always at the table side by side with us.
Awesome. So next question here has come from Monica, who said, do you have tips for leveraging data to dictate how managers coach and decide on KPIs?
Absolutely. So data that we're using right now, most of the time, sales leaders will come to us identifying AEs who need coaching based on how they're achieving quota. And sometimes quota isn't the only lever that we should look at to determine success. That's obviously going to be everything that a sales leader is looking at. But leveraging other data, if you use a conversation intelligence tool, we use Gong, we've used Chorus in the past. Any of these, you can look at data such as talk time. How much is your AE talking versus how much time are they spending listening to other people? That's really important data to help coach. You can also use tags and flags in your intelligence tool as an example to help show where they're asking discovery questions and what those questions are and whether they're actually following those down. A mistake that we see a lot is when you ask a discovery question, an AE will immediately respond with a solution because they know where they want to end up. But using tools and data to actually slow down, dissect how that discovery call goes, and lean in and make sure that we're not trying to solve problems too quickly is really an important KPI to have. So the discovery questions and active listening, and you can get a lot of that data from a tool like a conversation intelligence tool. So that was a very specific example of how we would leverage data around coaching conversations.
Awesome answer. So the next question here is how to leverage metrics on initiatives like sales kickoffs and events.
Yes, if you can add more to that question, what type of metrics? Are we talking about more than participation or really kind of looking at outcomes? I'm watching the chat to see if we get more. But around sales kickoff, making sure that every bit of the training time or the time that you get from AEs is well used. If it becomes a one-way conversation in training and sales kickoffs, people will zone out. So the way that we get engagement, and we can measure that engagement, that's some of the data we lean in on, is by seeing how we can bring people to the table. Some of the things that we've done that were really fun were leveraging salespeople. If we're talking about a new product, have them face off, actually compete and win sales kickoff. And so that's engagement data because you use their natural competitive nature to help drive outcomes and make sure that they're receiving it. But then you go and you look for difference in behavior on the job. So I'm seeing the follow-up, how to evaluate the impact of initiatives. Depending on what the initiative is that's launched at sales kickoff, you'd measure it differently. But in general, we've got to make sure that the value of what they're taking away is of higher value than the time they would have spent selling. So that's really how you want to dissect whether that investment of time and energy was worth it, is how much of a lift do you see in the activities that you train around during a sales kickoff to get some different outcomes.
Awesome. And the final question here that's come in your opinion, what is the number one universal metric to hold yourself accountable to in a sales enablement manager role? And how would you measure it for personal goal setting?
That is a great question. And my mind is going two ways. So I see you ask for number one. I think the number one metric would be, we want to have a self-assessment, right? I want to be able to have a 360 view of what my sales leaders are thinking, what my teammates are thinking, and ultimately what my boss above me is thinking of the work I'm doing. So getting a 360 feedback is really how I would measure my impact. But if I'm looking at ultimately what one metric would be most meaningful is that sales velocity, because when you have more sales velocity, you're getting to more closed won deals. So by improving that metric that we walked through over the last few minutes together, that's how you can really reflect the biggest impact on you as an enabler.
Awesome. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Victoria. It looks like we have no more questions. Amy, I do have one more question, as a lot of our sessions have focused around like career development, and a lot of our attendees are new to enablement. So I'd love to ask you, as a sales enabler, what one piece of advice would you have for someone who's new to enablement that's looking to really like get into the field and kind of progress in a career?
You know, a lot of what I spoke about today related to performance gaps and performance consulting goes back to training that I went and sought out. I think as enablers, it's really easy to be seen as those who can't do teach. And we don't want that reputation. So what can we do to get better at our craft? I've taken and I've had teammates take facilitation training, instructional design training, and ultimately performance consulting so that you learn how to diagnose the root cause of problems so that you can solve them. So again, part of that is what we brought into our session today. But if you're able to get training around performance consulting and making sure that you're solving the right problem with the right solution, you will be much more successful in your role. And I think that sort of professional development is not always what we lean into and seek out. Although I think everyone here probably is doing that. That's the whole purpose of the festival, is to get better at our craft. But I think really leaning into performance consulting would be something that would set you apart.
That's a great bit of advice, and yeah, a great way to end the session. If anyone does have any more questions for Amy, please do reach out to her over on LinkedIn, and I'm sure that she'll be more than happy to kind of answer any questions you have and continue the conversation over there. So that said, Amy, thank you so much for taking the time to present to us and answer the questions. And to everyone that tuned in, thank you so much, and we'll see you all very soon.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.